I'm getting pretty curious now as to whether one of these will actually fit in one of these. Hi, welcome back to the shed. Recently when I did a refurb on a Sega Dreamcast controller, not this one, this needs a refurb. This analog stick here, I speculated on whether you might be able to replace that with a GameCube one. The Dreamcast one is like a hard plastic piece that's attached there, and a GameCube one has like a grippy rubberized bit on the top. They do look quite similar, so I mentioned it while I was doing it and just sort of speculated on the idea, and it's been nagging at me since. So we've got another Dreamcast controller that's due a refurb, and I've got some spare caps to go on a GameCube controller. I'm going to have a little bit of an investigation and see if it is actually compatible, or if we can make it compatible. Unlike last time, I'm not going to barge on ahead and do a full refurb first. We're going to try and get this working first. If that works, then I'll move on to do a refurb, and we'll have a bit of a unique Dreamcast controller then, so quite curious to see how this goes. I've got another controller, all prime, ready for a refurb. A few scratches here and there, we'll get those out later. First thing we're going to concentrate on is this analog stick. The reason I've picked this one is that the analog stick on here is actually a little bit yellowed, but while it's out, we're going to have a look at the possibility of replacing it with something different. I did a refurbishment recently on a GameCube controller. I'll try and remember to leave a link on the video for that one if you haven't seen it yet, but it had like quite bad scratches across this analog stick, and I took that one out and replaced it with one of these reproduction ones. And when I bought them, I bought a few because I knew I had a few different GameCube controllers that need fixing up. But when I was doing the Dreamcast, I did notice that the shape of these was very, very similar, and the way they slot on seemed quite similar. So it might be that one of these could go on one of these controllers. It'd be pretty cool. The colour's a good match. Let's find out if it works. That will just lift out of there. Put all that part of it to one side for now. Slide that off there, because what we're concerned with is this stick here, and namely that part. Okay, so if we look at that next to this, the dome is almost identical. The height of the pad is maybe a tiny bit higher on the GameCube one, and on the inside the opening is a very similar shape. Now, this is our Dreamcast one. On the inside of the Dreamcast one, there's two flat edges and a curve at each end. Looking into the GameCube one, it's very, very similar. There's two flat edges and a curve at one end. The other end is like a specific slotting shape. So I suspect, yeah, I mean, it was a lot to hope for it to just plop straight on straight away, but it's close. Looking at this shape where we've got the curve and then the other flat shape there, it might be worth just filing down a part of this control stick here so that it fits on. Hopefully it'll still stay fairly centered. I'm still torn. I can either file off the edge of this flat, which I think is going to be the easiest option, or I can try and find a way of just removing a little bit in there, which is going to be harder to keep neat. So I think what I'll do is I'll remove this bit here. Let's get a brush to get all the dust off. See if that cap fits on there now. Oh. Yeah, that does. And obviously it's still a little bit tall when I look at the original and see how far down that goes. What I'll do is get a pencil, make a little mark as to where that goes. That comes down to that point there, and then when I've got the GameCube one on there, so which is my flattened edge, that's my flattened edge, that comes down. That's still standing up a bit much, so I think what I need to do is take a bit more, I mean it moves around okay, but I think what I need to do is take a bit more off the plastic there. So on the Dreamcast, if I put that down to there, that's 7mm deep, and on the GameCube one, if we put the little pin in there, that is only 5.6mm in. So the Dreamcast one is deeper, but this one comes up a bit more, so I may need to take a little bit off the top of this stick to get it down to that point, because our magic point is to be able to get this edge down to there, and if I look at those side by side, I think this comes up a little bit high. So it's going on a bit more smoothly now, but we are still quite a way away from that pencil line there. Right. So I've removed quite a bit more. So I ended up taking quite a bit off that, and one thing to note is when you get further down, it's actually kind of hollow at that point, so you've got to be careful not to remove too much. Also, now that it's done, the fit of the cap on there, it goes to the right point, but it's fairly loose, so once I've double checked it and everything seems to be working, I will maybe just put a tiny bit of super glue on the end just to hold that in place. But first I've got to test it and see if it actually functions, see if it moves around comfortably inside the pad. So I don't need to bother with any of the buttons or anything, but I do need to get this in place. It just sort of sits on the surface here, and then there's the two small screws. See, that's far too loose there, I've filed a bit too much off it. I'll just sit on there, put that back in place here, and hope that it fits. Seems to go in place okay. It sits flat on the board there, and my controller looks alright actually. But it looks maybe a little bit low, maybe it could have been a bit higher up. Checking it against there, if I do this again I would definitely make it stick up a bit more. Right, so there are ways and means around that, because I think that does need to be a bit higher, otherwise there's a lot of shadow around here, so it just looks a bit weird. Right, so let's see what we can do with that. First of all, something to block the hole up a little bit. A bit of card, hold it back on itself, see if that just makes the difference for us. It won't quite fit, we'll trim a bit off. Right, so I've got a tiny bit of card I'm just going to pack into the end there. Try and get it to sit flat if I can. And then put that into there. Try that in the controller. Okay, so that sits much better, just a little bit higher up. It moves fine, feels comfortable enough. Compare it to another pad, got another one here, so we've got the original and we've got the GameCube one. Still a little bit, I still think it needs to be out just a little bit more, so I'll mess around with that. Try and get it to sit a bit more flush. I've just taken too much of the stick off, unfortunately. Sit that on top there. See, that's quite a bit higher than the original pencil mark I'd figured out for the other one, so the dome's slightly different on the Dreamcast stick. So again, that's its flat there, that's its okay there. Now that's much better. So there's no shadow around here. That fits on a little bit wobbly, so I think I'll glue that in place just to secure it. Moves around fine in the space. The rubber doesn't kind of rub out on any of the plastic bit of the pad. I think that's going to be pretty good. GameCube cap that I've just cleaned up any of the mold lines from, tidied all that up, so that's ready to go on. The inside, because I cut the stick too short, I've packed in a little bit of card there. I'm going to put a tiny bit of super glue into that point. And this is my Dreamcast stick, which has been shortened, as I said before, shortened a bit much, but the movement is still good there, and to keep that movement nice and solid, hopefully the glue will help. Now I'm going to use some of this Gorilla super glue. I like this because it comes with a little brush, which makes things a little easier to control. It doesn't flow like water like a lot of super glue does. So a tiny bit inside the openings there on all sides. Cocktail stick just to take up the excess that's come over, because what we don't want is the glue getting into the analog stick mechanism and seizing it all up. So I'll line up where that's going to go, put it in place, push it down, and then I'm going to leave it upside down to set, so any glue that runs off is going to run into the cap rather than into the mechanism. So that's just going to get put down to one side and give me time to refurb all these nasty bits here to get another nice new controller. So I'll put my camera batteries on charge, I'll clean this up, and I'll catch you in a bit. All the bits are cleaned up, ready to go back together. The glue's dried on the stick and it seems pretty good. It's comfortable to move around. Stays fairly solid, doesn't rub out on anything. Oh yeah, let's get it back together. Right, all cleaned up and back together, and I have to say, it really looks the part. It looks like it was always on there. It doesn't look like I've taken apart from a completely different brand, let alone a completely different controller, and put it in there. It moves around nicely, it feels really comfortable actually. Yeah, so that's our old cap, and here's our new one. Now the thing is, with these being made out of solid plastic, there's not really a reason to have to ever replace them, but this one had gone quite yellowed, so that's one reason to replace it. And also with the solid plastic over long gaming sessions, it might be a little less comfortable than the rubber one. So I'm looking forward to trying this out, but in terms of the overall aesthetic, I think it looks really good. Even the shape of this kind of fits in with the shape of the swirl on the logo, so yeah, I'm liking it. Right, next job, I'm gonna get a VMU and a vibration pack in there, go and test it out, and then report back to you. Hopefully it will go well this time. There's our finished product with the stick in place. It moves smoothly, it's comfortable. The colours match really well, it looks the part. I actually like the way these circles match the whole circular motif of the pad design. I think it's really good. I've given it a test and played with it, and it feels very comfortable to play on. So although it did involve a little bit of cutting of the original stick, which I didn't like doing, I think it's been worth it. I think it's a really nice little variation on the pad. Well, the main point of this in the first place was I didn't know if it was possible or not, so it is. So we're done and it's complete, totally refurbished, like new, like the last project I did. This time no issues with the cable, thankfully, and in terms of testing the analog stick, it's perfect, it's really good. In fact, I prefer it to the original. Don't take these videos as tutorials. I haven't got a clue what I'm doing. This was a first for me. It's just an idea. Would that fit? I'll give it a go. This is just me giving it a go with things. If I was doing this again, I would do it differently. I'd be much more cautious in terms of cutting down the stick itself. I'd go for a tighter fit, and I'd keep putting it back into the front shell to check that it was sticking out the right amount, and then I wouldn't have to sort of pack it out or use glue or anything like that. However, now that I've worked around it, it does all fit really well. It looks like a really neat flush fit. There's nothing that looks like a bodge job. You know it was a bit of a bodge job. The end result is fantastic, but if you're doing this yourself, do be cautious in terms of removing those bits of the stick, or maybe try it the other way I was thinking and take bits out of the cap instead and see how that goes. Let me know if it works. But I'm really happy with the end result. So if we're doing any multiplayers and you're playing against me, this is my one. What do you think? Was it worth the effort? Does it make the pad better? Do you like it? Let me know in the comments, see what you think. I'm curious to know what everyone else thinks. Has anyone done this sort of thing before as well? If you've modded a Dreamcast pad and put a different stick in, again, let me know. Thanks so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed it, and see you for the next one. Bye.